Good evening. Let us begin with what is known, and only what is known. Overnight, Russian forces carried out a large-scale drone assault on Ukraine. The attack involved 115 drones. That number matters because it defines the scale before we even talk about outcomes. Ukrainian air defense forces responded throughout the night. According to official reporting, 96 of those drones were destroyed in the air. That figure reflects interception, tracking, and engagement across multiple regions. 16 drones were not intercepted. Those drones struck 11 locations across Ukraine. In addition to those direct strikes, debris from downed drones fell on 2 other sites. This is not a single-point event. It is not one place or one moment. It unfolded across hours, across airspace, across regions. Ukrainian defense units were engaged in counter-air operations throughout the assault. That phrase, counter-air operations, means active defense. It means radar, coordination, and sustained response under pressure. There is something stark about numbers like these. 115 launched, 96 destroyed, 16 reaching their targets, debris affecting 2 more locations. Each number represents an action already completed by the time morning arrived. Nothing here is theoretical. Nothing here is pending. When officials say the drones were launched overnight, they mean while most civilians were asleep. They mean darkness. They mean limited visibility, except for the work of air defense systems scanning the sky. And when officials say air defense units were engaged, they are describing a process that does not stop once the first drone appears. It continues, drone after drone, alert after alert. The work is repetitive and relentless. Some nights are measured in minutes, one might say quietly on air, and some nights are measured in how long you can stay awake. The drones were launched by Russian forces. That fact is clear and stated without qualification. The response came from Ukrainian air defenses. That is also clear. The impact locations are described as 11 sites struck directly, with 2 additional sites affected by debris. Those are separate categories: direct impact and secondary impact. Debris matters. It is the physical remainder of a successful interception. It falls where gravity takes it, not where it is aimed. When air defenses destroy a drone, it does not disappear. It becomes fragments. Those fragments still land somewhere, so the accounting includes them. 11 locations struck by drones that reached the ground intact. 2 locations affected by debris from drones that did not. That distinction tells us something about the effectiveness of the defense response. It also tells us something about the unavoidable consequences of aerial warfare, even when interception succeeds. Ukrainian defense units were engaged across the country. The reporting does not list individual cities or regions in this summary. It lists the scope instead. 11 locations. 2 more affected. A country responding as a system. This assault took place over a single night. It did not extend into days. It did not pause and resume. By morning, the drones had either been destroyed or had struck their targets. The engagement was complete. There is a moment when the noise stops, a broadcaster might say softly, and you realize the night is over. The summary tells us that Ukrainian air defenses destroyed 96 drones. That number is central. It indicates the majority of the assault was intercepted. But the presence of 16 successful strikes reminds us that interception is not total. It rarely is. The phrase, launched an assault, is used deliberately. This was not an isolated incident. It was a coordinated action involving more than 100 unmanned aerial vehicles. The timeline matters here. January 16th into January 17th. One night crossing into another day. That overnight window is when the assault took place. That is when air defenses were active. That is when counter-air operations were ongoing. No additional claims are made in the reporting. There are no casualty figures mentioned here. There are no descriptions of specific damage. What we have is a structural outline of events: launch, interception, impact, debris. And behind that outline, the constant presence of defense units doing exactly what they are tasked to do. The reporting does not use dramatic language. It uses precise language. It counts. And sometimes counting is the most powerful thing you can do. Because numbers do not raise their voice. They just sit there. 115, you might repeat to yourself. 96, 16, 11 locations. 2 more. Those numbers form the shape of the night. As the morning of January 17th arrived, the assault had ended. Air defense units had completed their engagements. The drones were no longer in the sky. What remained were the confirmed outcomes, the tallies, the locations affected. This is where we begin. Not with analysis, not with prediction. Just with the facts of one night, clearly laid out, exactly as reported. As that night progressed, the activity did not occur all at once. 115 drones were launched, and they did not arrive as a single wave. They arrived over time, requiring sustained attention from air defense units. Ukrainian air defenses were... That figure reflects repeated, successful interceptions. Each interception required detection, decision, and execution. The reporting makes clear that these defenses were active across the country. There is no indication of a single defensive node handling the response. Instead, multiple units were involved, coordinated under counter-air operations. Counter-air operations are described plainly in the summary. They refer to defensive actions taken to protect airspace from aerial threats. In this case, unmanned aerial vehicles. Throughout the night, those units remained operational. They did not disengage after one interception. They remained active as long as drones continued to enter Ukrainian airspace. 16 drones were not intercepted. Those drones struck 11 locations across Ukraine. This tells us that some locations experienced more than one impact. The reporting does not specify which locations were hit. It does not describe the type of sites involved. It simply confirms the number of locations affected. In addition to those strikes, debris from destroyed drones affected 2 other sites. These were not direct hits by intact drones. They were secondary impacts from fragments falling after interceptions. That distinction is important because it shows how the effects of an aerial assault can extend beyond the intended targets. Even when a drone is destroyed, its remains still descend. They land somewhere. So when the night ended, the accounting included more than just successful strikes. It included the physical consequences of successful defenses as well. The phrase overnight assault is not dramatic language here. It is descriptive. It indicates the duration and timing of the event. The assault began on January 16th and continued into January 17th. That transition from one day to the next matters in understanding the scope. This was not confined to a narrow window. Ukrainian air defense forces remained engaged during that entire period. There is no indication of interruption or pause. The response continued as long as the threat persisted. Holding the line through the dark, one might say quietly, is its own kind of endurance. The summary does not describe how long each engagement lasted. It does not describe how many interceptions occurred in any given hour. It stays with totals. Totals can sometimes flatten experience, but they also provide clarity. They tell us what happened without embellishment. 115 drones launched, 96 destroyed, 16 striking 11 locations, debris affecting 2 more. Those numbers do not overlap. They add up to a complete picture of the assault's outcome. The reporting also notes that Ukrainian defense units were engaged in counter-air operations. This tells us the response was organized and intentional. It was not improvised. Counter-air operations require coordination among multiple systems. They require communication and continuity. They require readiness before the first drone appears. The summary does not suggest surprise. It does not suggest a delayed response. It simply states that defenses were active. That matters because it frames the event as a contest of systems rather than a moment of chaos. Aerial assaults and air defenses operate according to procedures. This night followed those procedures. 16 drones reaching their targets does not negate the 96 that were intercepted. Both figures exist simultaneously. Both define the outcome. When debris from downed drones affected 2 additional sites, that expanded the footprint of the event. Those sites were not the original targets. They were affected because of successful defensive actions nearby. This is one of the realities of modern aerial conflict. Success and consequence can coexist in the same moment. Interception does not mean invisibility. The summary does not assign blame beyond identifying the launching force. Russian forces launched the drones. Ukrainian forces defended against them. There is no additional attribution. There is no commentary. The reporting also does not describe what happened after the impacts. It does not describe response on the ground. It remains focused on the aerial engagement itself. That focus is intentional. It keeps the narrative centered on the assault and the defense. It avoids extrapolation. By the time the final drone was accounted for, the overnight operation had ended. Air defense units were no longer actively engaging targets. The sky was clear. Morning came with a complete tally, not a partial count, not an estimate. The numbers were known. The locations affected were identified. The engagement was over. There is a stillness after the last alert, someone might say, when you finally know the count. This was one night. It was not part of a longer timeline in this reporting. It stands on its own. The summary does not compare this assault to previous ones. It does not suggest escalation or reduction. It simply reports what occurred. That restraint matters. It allows the facts to speak without amplification. It allows the audience to understand the scale without being told how to feel. 115 drones is a large number. 96 interceptions is also a large number. 16 successful strikes is not insignificant. Each figure carries weight. Each figure tells part of the same account. The involvement of air defense units across Ukraine suggests a distributed response. The reporting does not indicate concentration in one area. It indicates national engagement. This is consistent with the number of locations affected. 11 locations struck directly, 2 affected by debris. The assault was not localized. It was broad in reach. It required broad defense. As the night moved into early morning, the counter-air operations concluded. There were no more drones to track, no more targets to engage. What remained was documentation. What remained was reporting. What remained was the record of the night. The summary gives us that record. It does not decorate it. It does not soften it. It tells us exactly what happened, and then it stops. And sometimes stopping is part of clarity. Sometimes the facts are complete and nothing more is required. The overnight assault ended with the destruction of most of the drones launched. It also ended with confirmed impacts across multiple locations. Both outcomes are true. The sequence of events was no longer unfolding. It was complete. What remained was confirmation. Russian forces had launched 115 drones overnight. That figure was fixed. It did not change with time or interpretation. Ukrainian air defenses destroyed 96 of those drones. That outcome was recorded after counter-air operations concluded. It represented the majority of the airborne threats. 16 drones reached the ground intact. Those drones struck 11 locations across Ukraine. That impact count was separate from the interceptions. In addition to those direct strikes, debris from downed drones affected 2 other sites. Those impacts were the result of successful interceptions. They were still counted because they still occurred. When the morning reporting was compiled, all of these elements were accounted for. There were no drones unaccounted for. There were no ongoing engagements. The phrase, overnight assault, accurately described the timing. The phrase, counter-air operations, accurately described the response. Both phrases were factual. not interpretive. The summary did not extend beyond the night itself. It did not describe events before January 16th. It did not project events beyond January 17th. That containment is important. It defines the boundaries of what is known. It defines the boundaries of what is being reported. Ukrainian defense units were engaged during the assault. That engagement ended when the last drone was either destroyed or struck. There is no indication of continued activity after that point. The reporting does not list individual defense systems. It does not name specific units. It speaks in aggregate. Aggregate reporting can sometimes feel distant, but it is also precise. It prevents distortion. 115 drones is not a metaphor. It is a count. 96 destroyed is not a claim. It is a recorded outcome. 16 drones striking 11 locations is not an estimate. It is a confirmed result. Debris affecting 2 additional sites is not incidental. It is part of the total impact. When these figures are placed together, they describe the full arc of the night: launch, engagement, interception, impact. Nothing in the summary suggests uncertainty about those stages. Nothing is presented as provisional. The language is declarative. There is a moment, one might say softly, when the numbers stop changing and you know the night is done. The reporting does not dwell on what happened at each location. It does not describe damage or response. It does not shift focus away from the aerial dimension. That choice keeps the account narrow and exact. It avoids speculation. It avoids extrapolation. The summary confirms that Ukrainian air defenses were effective against the majority of the drones launched. It also confirms that not all drones were intercepted. Both facts exist without contradiction. The involvement of 11 locations indicates geographic spread. The additional 2 sites affected by debris further extend that spread. The assault was not isolated to a single area. Yet the reporting does not describe chaos. It describes engagement. It describes process. Counter-air operations imply planning and readiness. They imply established procedures. They imply continuity from one interception to the next. The summary does not suggest that defenses were overwhelmed. It does not suggest that defenses were idle. It simply states what defenses achieved. By morning, the operational phase had ended. What remained was assessment. What remained was documentation. The figures provided are the result of that documentation. They are not interim numbers. They are final for the period described. This matters because it allows the event to be understood as a complete unit. One night, one assault, one defensive response. The reporting does not attach adjectives to the numbers. It does not say massive or limited. It lets the scale speak for itself. 115 drones is a large number. 96 interceptions is also a large number. 16 impacts across 11 locations is not small. Each of these facts stands on its own. Together, they form the complete account. The summary also does not include commentary from officials beyond the facts themselves. There are no quoted reactions. There are no assessments of intent or outcome beyond what occurred. This keeps the focus where it belongs, on the events, on the actions taken and their results. When debris from downed drones affected 2 sites, that detail was included without elaboration. It was not minimized. It was not emphasized. It was simply recorded. This is the kind of reporting that values completeness over narrative. It values accuracy over tone. It values confirmation over immediacy. The overnight assault ended. The counter-air operations ended. The night gave way to morning. What remained was the record of what happened between January 16th and January 17th. No more, no less. There are nights that pass quietly, someone might reflect, and nights that leave a ledger behind. This night left a ledger. 115 launched, 96 destroyed, 16 striking 11 locations, 2 additional sites affected by debris. Those numbers are the conclusion. They do not ask for interpretation. They do not invite speculation. They simply exist. The reporting fulfills its purpose by stopping there. It does not extend the meaning of the event beyond its boundaries. It does not attempt to resolve anything larger. It tells us what happened. It tells us when it happened. It tells us how it ended. And then it stops. That is the end of this account. The night is over. The figures are set.